Welcome to Author Showcase, part of the Write-Tukubuli Literary Virtual Festival. And today we have my good friend and mentor, former journalist and author Nicole Georges-Bennett. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on. And allow me to introduce your host, Sam George.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I haven't hosted in a while, so forgive me.
I know.
Don't
On
even
to be on
remember.
this side of the fence, eh?
Yes. All right, so let's jump right in, Nicole. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right. And so before we actually begin talking about your writing, I want to ask you this about the Right to Kubuli Literary Festival. How did that even come about in the first place? I know you're uh, one of the planners behind this initiative, which I commend you and I guess commend myself too, because full disclosure, I'm also a part of the planning committee. But I think that this is so important, especially for our Dominican writers. And as I said in the showcase you did with me, that I want to see Dominican writing be known around the world.
Hmm.
We are known for bouillon music and siwo and all of that. I want to see our literary work be also known globally. So thank you for putting this together, or helping us put this together and giving our authors a chance to showcase themselves. Hopefully, this leads to not just recognition, but also name recognition for some, or if not all, of our writers. So I just wanted to put that out there before we get into today's author showcase.
Well, thank you, Sam. And of course, I'm just a small cog in the whole machinery that has put this together. I believe that it sort of came up organically, as in conversations with myself and you and other writers from other different groups representing Dominican writers and authors. And we were sort of lamenting that there didn't seem to be that much of an online presence for Dominican writers, a place where they could showcase their work or learn how to hone and develop their skills. So we decided, I think that the Dominica Cultural Division had done something similar in terms of a virtual literary festival, maybe last year or the year before. I thought that went really well, and commend the government for putting that together. But there didn't seem to be a follow-up festival.
Right.
So we decided that we would reach out to other writing groups and see if they were interested in collaborating and putting this together. And I reached out to Celia Sorrendo at Nature Isle Literary Festival, also to Roy Sanford at Write-Tukubuli Writers. We also reached out to Leslie at the Dominican Poetic Circle. Sam and myself represent Piton Noir, which is Dominica's sci-fi fantasy collective. And yeah, everybody was on board, and we thought that it would be great to try and pool all of our writers together, and also to encourage Dominicans who are interested in writing, the kids, the youth, to have a place where they could showcase their writing, whether they're published or not.
Yes.
Write-Tukubuli Virtual Literary Festival was born, I presume.
Yes, yes. And so I think those are the kinds of initiatives that we need to pursue. And it doesn't matter whether you are published or whether you are unpublished.
Mhm.
I think it'll help writers to begin that journey. And I believe earlier we talked about whether it's being too late. No, as long as you are alive, and
Yes.
even if you have challenges with your eyesight, that is still not even an excuse, because I certainly know of a certain writer who
Yeah.
this doesn't stop him. So I don't
And of
think,
course, I want to say hi to Dr. Steinberg Henry.
yeah, I don't think so. That being said, I don't believe that there are excuses we can make anymore. And with technology, it is so much easier to do research. It's so much easier to get to do what you need to do. You no longer need to use a pen and paper.
And the platforms that exist now that
Exactly.
you can showcase the work from. So
and you can publish. There's just so many avenues and less excuses.
Yes, and
Anyway,
hopefully
we don't
all
want
of
to
that
get
will come up in the festival, because
right.
we're going to be doing workshops, we're going to be doing panel discussions, dealing with
Mhm.
timely topics like this.
Right. So yes, so that's why we don't want to take up too much of the time showcasing your work. I just wanted to highlight the significance of your contribution to the festival before we get into that. So getting into
I
the author showcase, I mentioned that you are a former journalist. My first question is, given your experience as a journalist, both in print and on radio, uh, how has that influenced your writing?
So, because as a journalist, one of the first things you learn to do is to write news stories, to research, to write articles. I've worked in newspaper, magazine, radio, and television, all of which require a different tweak on your writing skill set. And
Mhm.
fiction writing for me has always been the most freeing and the most creative that I could be, because it literally is a product of what I call the Holy Spirit and inspiration and creativity coming together. But my technical background in journalism writing helps me to keep things very focused, very structured, and research based, I should say.
Mhm.
So journalism definitely has provided me the foundation from which to launch my fiction writing career.
Okay. And so sticking with the journalism background for a moment, um, does that with that, do you prefer writing short form article style or long form novels, and why?
So because of journalism, and particularly because my Bachelor of Arts degree is in broadcast journalism. So, which I earned from what is now called the Toronto Metropolitan University. Back in my day, it was Ryerson. Um, the formats that you write for radio scripts have to be precise, and they have to be 30 seconds to a minute at most. So coming out of that tradition, I am definitely a short story writer. Novels are a real challenge for me. So when I write long form, I think they would be more classified as novelettes as versus novels. So
Mhm.
you're not going to get Stephen King The Stand, type of major works. George R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, looks like a coffee table,
Right.
when you put
Yeah.
them together. So yeah, you're not going to
Less
get
than 100,000 words. Yes.
yeah, so you're not going to get that from me. So yeah, so my
Yet. Yet.
novels tend to be hopefully context heavy, but not necessarily long in format.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, that's pretty interesting, because I think everyone, looks for an author to write a full novel. But
There are novels in that they're full. I mean, hopefully, they begin at the beginning and they end at the ending, and there's a
right.
climax. All of the other elements that a novel should have, it's just that mine are like this.
Well,
They're
you
beach
are
reads. They're beach
right.
reads.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're going
Exactly.
on a plane, you probably finish them in the 5 hour, 6, 7 hour flight.
Right. Yeah, that's actually probably a good strategy, especially nowadays. People have so so much time and yet so little time at the same time. Because technology is making it easier for us to do certain things, or we can automate certain things, but we still have less time to read a book. And so, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe that's the way writing and reading is going to go,
Mm.
as we go along. You are a person of faith,
Yes.
and so I want to ask you how do you balance writing, say, on a faith-based theme and writing sci-fi fantasy? Do you see them as naturally or a natural connection between them?
That's a good question. Not necessarily. From my perspective, there isn't necessarily a natural connection, but it is just that whatever I write, whichever genre I choose to write in, is informed by my faith. So I have written in different genres. I don't just write in sci-fi fantasy. It is my preferred genre, but I've also done murder mysteries. I've done one book of poetry. I've done a children's book. I've written romance. So I've written, I've pretty much explored as many genres as I could. My faith informs my decisions in terms of my character growth and development. I have lots of themes of redemption, rejuvenation, themes of forgiveness. So those faith-based decisions that I make in my novels are because of ultimately God's love for mankind and how that filters through my life. Mm-hmm. So it does go through, I guess, by osmosis, goes into my novels, regardless of whether the setting is a planet, a colony.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call those things? A colony, that's set on Mars, or if it's set on a small island like Dominica, or in a work environment. There's not necessarily, I think, a natural connection between faith, except in Christian writing and Christian novels, with mm-hmm. the other genres. But definitely, faith can inform the decisions you make as an author when you're writing in these other genres.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That was a long answer to a very short question.
No. That's perfectly fine. I think it's great. I think that, you have to get the chance to explain what you're trying to say, because
Thank you.
We don't want to be out of context. But definitely, that's very good. That's a very good way of putting it. And I think it's also encouraging to other writers of faith, mm-hmm. Not to be too stringent on themselves. I think that just because you're a person of faith, which I am also, doesn't mean you cannot write outside. You don't have to write Christian content only. You can write a sci-fi novel. You can write. And as long as I always believe that what you do is always about the motive, what it is you are trying to accomplish.
But what if, I have a question for you. What if you're dealing with a character who is a villain or a criminal, and perhaps the things that they're doing are very much against your faith beliefs? How do you then deal with a character who, for example, maybe uses profanity,
mm-hmm.
Or there's, or does something that's graphically violent? How do you deal with satisfying your requirements as a Christian when you're writing somebody who's very anti-Christian?
Right. I think that is that's a very good question. Yeah, and I appreciate it. So I think that if a writer is writing about a character that is doing something I don't believe, unless that is you, I don't think it should hurt you, or hurt your faith, or damage your faith, because you are saying what someone else is doing.
Okay.
Because not only that, if you are writing that particular character with the eyes of our Savior Jesus, then you are not necessarily focusing on what they're doing, but the end. Is there redemption in the end? And are you trying to say that, because let's face it, none of us as human beings are perfect. We
Mhm.
are all flawed, we've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we will continue to do so until Christ returns.
Right.
So, and there are many people, many of us who will do things that most people will consider evil. But that doesn't mean that there is no redemption, because the Lord says that just come as you are. Doesn't matter what you've done. And as the word says, there's only one. Christ said there's only one sin that's unforgivable. So I don't believe, and I may be wrong. And since I'm not a theologian or I didn't go to Bible school or any of that, I may be wrong, but I don't believe writing a character that's doing wickedness, which men do, which we do as human beings. I don't believe that that should affect you. It may hurt your witness a little bit, because some people might say, "Oh well, he's a Christian, or he's a pastor, or he's whatever. Why is he writing that way? Why is he writing some
Right.
graphic things?" And I would say, yes, you have to be careful. You have to try to keep your keep your words to a certain way. Like, I wouldn't write profanity,
Hmm.
or at least not overt profanity. I wouldn't do that, but certain people will,
Yep.
because you don't want people to miss the message. I guess ultimately is what if whatever it is you're doing will glorify the Lord. I think that's what it really boils down to. It took me a long way to come to that, but I think that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's continue with you for a moment. You mentioned a couple of titles that you've written. You mentioned your children's book. That is a faith-based book. So tell us a little bit about that.
So, Terry the Bunny, We Don't Believe in the Same Things, is the last work that I've produced. I tend to have about 4 or 5 projects on the go at the same time, but this one I really felt a resonance with and a connection to, because it was based off of sort of a real life circumstance. So, Terry the Bunny is about a little bunny who lives in Sunshine Village in the Caribbean, and he and his best friend Purple Turtle, Dominicans, will know where I'm talking about, have a fight when they discover that they don't have the same faith traditions or religious beliefs. And so this whole story is Terry trying to work out, can he be friends with someone who doesn't believe the same things that he does? And between his gentle guidance from his mother, Mama Mabel, and his own working things out, he comes to a solution at the end. And the gist of it is to try to teach children who live in a multicultural society how to engage with their friends and with people of other faiths in a way that is respectful of the other person's beliefs, but still holding true to your own. And that was really important for me as a parent, raising children in Toronto in a very multicultural, multi faith environment and society, and running up against fellow students who didn't believe what they believed, and in teachers who didn't believe what they did, and principals who didn't believe what they believed,
Mhm.
and how they could, with respect, explain their beliefs and hold true and strong to their faith traditions that we and my husband had taught them, while providing the other person with the space to explain their side of things and what their perspectives were. So, all of that to say, it is, I think, a very important lesson, but couched in this very cute, charming story for kids.
Right. Well, I mean, who doesn't love a bunny, right? Yeah. So I see you how you're wearing your Dominican hero or
That's right. It's
heroine.
a
This is
Super Dominica. I've got
Super
to give a shout
Dominican.
out to Albert Pierre, who is the illustrator and the creative
Okay.
mind and genius behind this T-shirt. I also have to say that I have had this T-shirt for about 10 years, and as you can see, the colors are still. I'm going to give you a little. Colors are still very bright.
Wow.
So great
That
quality
that
albums,
speaks to
and thank you for.
the quality of the work, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, I
Another
feel.
Dominican skilled Dominican, right? Um, yeah. So wearing your T-shirt, obviously, and we've mentioned you are Dominican, but how does that how does being Dominican or growing up in Dominica, how does that influence your writing, especially when you're writing fiction or when you're writing science fiction, fantasy? How does that play?
Well, Caribbean people have a funny way of describing their islands as not a real place because there's so many things that occur on islands that seem outrageous to the rest of the world that you almost feel like you're already living in a fantasy world. Um,
Planet Dominica, right?
when you come out of the islands and you live in North America or in Europe, and you think back to, wow, I left fertile, lush green mountains with fruits on every tree, beaches and rivers, and culture that is full and vibrant. And you almost start to you romanticize the
Mhm.
island to the point where it becomes almost like it was a fantasy, like we lived in a fantasy. Of course, when we're living there, we didn't see that. We see the guay and the hard work. But um, I think that it is, I've been living out of Dominica for many years, but I'm very much Dominican to the bone, to steal a
Mhm.
phrase from the Trinis. And it infiltrates my work in ways that I don't even expect. So I will, when I'm writing, somewhere along the line, a character may end up picking a mango, or
Well, that's not
a, lit-
unexpected.
yeah, or a little patois or a Creole might come out,
Right.
or I would say even my science fiction, because I have one sci-fi novel that's been on the burner for the last 25 years, but
Mm.
it's based off of the idea of Black people escaping a form of colonialism and racism. So they're leaving Earth
Right.
because of the racism and the oppressive systems, entrenched racism and institutionalized racism that they faced on Earth, and they're trying to escape to um, their own planet. Taking along the tenets and the how should I say, the principles of Marcus Garvey.
Mm.
That the black
Yeah.
man should have his own land, he should have his own businesses, his own empire. So
Wow.
I think as a Caribbean person and as a Dominican person, everything that I write somehow becomes instilled with my Dominicanness,
Mhm.
in small ways, in minute ways, maybe even in the way I turn a phrase or I write my sentences. It's probably a result of my Caribbean British upbringing. So
Right.
yeah, so it is in everything I think that I write.